Good evening, everyone. It's 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. This is David Cook with Mazda Motorsports. We're going to give a few more people, maybe about another 30 seconds or a minute to sign in, but really appreciate everybody who is timely to join. I think we got a pretty good webinar scheduled for today. It should go about an hour, and then we'll have questions at the end, but we'll start here in about maybe 30 more seconds. So really appreciate you guys being timely, and thank you for your patience. Thanks for the support. All right, let's get started. So welcome to the Global Mazda MX-5 Cup webinar. I'm David Cook, Business Development Manager for Mazda Motorsports. We are recording this webinar and will distribute it by tomorrow. The recording will not capture questions posed by our customers. However, the question box, which ultimately I'd like you guys to try to find, you'll be able to type in a question just to practice, does not get captured in this recording. So hopefully there's a little bit extra advantage for those who are joining. This webinar is for your benefit, so we highly encourage questions throughout the webinar, but we will spend the last 15 minutes answering the questions. For the webinar, we did invite all the customers of the Global MX-5 Cup car in North America only. Represented on the call are racers and teams from the Battery Tender MX-5 Cup, presented by BFG Tires, Pro World Challenge, SCCA, NASA, Track Day, and Country Club organizations. We are thankful to have you all join. For tonight's agenda, we have 3 of our partners with the Global MX-5 Cup program. Ian Berwick is the Motorsports Manager USA and Technical Support from Pagid. He will speak about the brake pads. Due to the exceptional feedback, just a side note from our customers about Pagid, Mazda Motorsports Competition Parts Department will carry pads for autocross and Spec Miata from Pagid starting this summer. We also have Pete Calhoun, many of you know, Motorsports Marketing Manager for BFG. To bring it home tonight, we have Glenn Long, owner and leader of Long Road Racing. He'll share updates about the Global MX-5 Cup car and a few other items worthy of note. If there are other questions during or after the presentation, please type them in the questions box and we will respond. If you would like to just test the question box, I think that would be helpful to try it now. That's been most successful during the past webinars we've hosted. So if for those that have joined, if you can find the questions box, maybe say hello, type in hello, that'd be great. If you have any issues finding it, apologies for the challenges. Maybe take another look. It looks like a few people have found it, so thank you. Hey guys. All right, so let's keep going. So first of all, I just want to say essentially congrats to Dean Copeland and Matt Fosnot. Part of the vision for the Global MX-5 Cup car was to have a crossover into other series. Of course, the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup presented by BFG Tires is our key series. However, you know, the race car made its debut in Pro World Challenge TCA at Virginia International Raceway last month, with Matt Fosnot piloting the Global MX-5 Cup car to both wins. Just this past weekend at CTMP, Dean Copeland, again in the Global MX-5 Cup car, took the checkered for the first race. The Global Cup car has won 3 of 4 races so far, with Mazda taking 11 of 12 podium spots in TCA. So it's been a really good start to the year. Contingency does pay, just as a reminder to those, $5,000 per race win for the Global Cup car in TCA. But of course, the large scholarship for a champion and Rookie of the Year for the series are offered in the Battery Tender series. So congrats again to Copeland Motorsports and SAC Racing. Good luck to everyone who is running in this car and any Mazda at Lime Rock Park this coming weekend. Regarding the website, we've recently launched a new Mazda Motorsports site. You probably have seen it if you got on since last week. You'll see site architecture has changed, the look and feel, and the entire UX, user experience. Next up is a new parts store launch. It probably excites more people on this call than the other. The wireframes are completed, just as an update, so I can say the UX is much improved, the navigation's improved, competition parts photos are added, the checkout process is enhanced, and much more. The goal is to launch this come this summer. In addition, another improvement that we hope to launch this summer is we'll have the contingency submission process go from mailing the forms in to submitting them online. Again, we're looking to launch that this summer as well. We do have a new hire in our competition parts team. It's Matthew White. As many of you know, Mike Allen was promoted to another department and Steve Sanders retired. As such, all the calls have fallen to Scott Kaluza and James Painter, who also process purchase orders, returns, contingency, and much more. Matthew White is getting up to speed nicely and is tackling more work each day. We also are hopeful we'll be able to hire another individual with significant Mazda parts experience to give you the customer service you're used to and deserve. In the meantime, for those of you on this webinar, I'd like to offer, Scott and I, would like to offer a little bit of hopefully extra customer service. So if you would, maybe take down my cell phone number and take down Scott's if you don't have it. We'll start with mine, but I'll tell you the purpose of it here in a minute. My cell phone number is 949-929-8494. I'll say that again. It's 949-929-8494. Scott Kaluza's 951-445-2701. 951-445-2701. Again, this is being recorded, so worst case, you could always pull it off of that within about 5-6 minutes of the start time. So what we like to do is offer during kind of the normal business operating hours when you'd want to call and perhaps to make an order, to have a question about an order that you've placed, other technical question. Certainly our hold times are a lot higher than we're used to, a lot higher than our customers are used to, and we're definitely making every effort we can to try to get that down and to give you guys better service. So this is just one more thing that we're offering here to everybody on this call, and that's if you call in and you're put on hold, what you could do is send Scott and I a text, just say, hey, called in, got put on hold, can you call me back? We will call you back ASAP. If it's parts, it would be Scott or James, but really on the MX-5 Cup side, oftentimes it would be Scott. So again, that's Monday through Friday. If you call between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. Pacific time, we would do that. The guys do take lunch from noon to 1, however, so phones are off. If you choose to email an order, which, you know, it's oftentimes it is more confident, inspiring, I think, to talk to some of the guys when placing an order. You feel free to do so. However, what we ask you to do so we don't lose the email or we don't get to emails until end of the day at times, as you know, again, we're on the phones quite a bit, please text Scott Kaluza and I for confirmation that received the email. Again, the text to confirm an order via email is necessary. Hopefully that helps, though. And again, I think every week it's going to get better and better. Finally, the hardtop for the MX-5 Cup car has been released. We're very happy with the quality and character of it from our design team in ACNA. We have priced it essentially as a loss leader in an effort to help keep costs manageable. It is a higher quality piece, so really it's the price is as low as we could go on it. Anyone who bought a Global Cup car from Long Road Racing will receive 10% on it. We cannot go to our typical 20% discount for pro racers with the price point we set. All right, well, that's it for me, guys. Really appreciate you joining. We've got Ian up next from Pagid.
Okay, hi guys. I think a lot of you have met me at the track at one time or another. I'm just going to give you a little bit of technical information about the pads and brakes in general. Just a little bit of product training, like I said, just the basics, covering pads and the compounds. a couple of key facts about brakes is typically 15 to 20% of each lap is spent on the brakes. And reality is they're one of the most reliable systems on race cars. It's pretty rare that you actually hear about a brake system failure unless the car's been heavily modified. And honestly, intelligent design and good maintenance solve almost every brake problem you'll ever encounter at the track itself. The advantages of having the brake system working well, obviously, is reduced lap times, the potential to outbrake your competitors, and basically giving the driver the confidence with a lap-to-lap consistency that really is key to becoming a good, fast, consistent driver. Now, some of the basic physics of the MX-5, right here just tells you the required braking power to stop the MX-5 from 125 to 0 is equivalent to about 900 horsepower. That's because it's a 5-second stop. That's all it takes to stop the car from 125. Now, think about that from a microwave oven standpoint, that you could boil a gallon of water in 5 seconds with the same equivalent energy content. A cup of water takes a minute, 2 minutes in a microwave. I don't do that very often, but some of you guys might have some reference to that. But in 5 seconds, a full gallon, that's a lot of energy all at once. Now, part of the heat distribution energy dissipation of the brake system, it's some pretty small writing over here on the right, but 10% of the thermal energy goes into the pad, and 90% of it gets absorbed by the disc. And the reality is it actually gets dissipated by convection, the air flowing around the disc, and a lot of it goes by radiation. If you think about anything that's near the disc, like the lower ball joint, a steering rod end, all those items get hot, not because the hot air is blowing on it, just by the radiation coming off the disc. So basically, whether there's air cooling it or not, it's cooling. And keep in mind that one of the views I like to keep and remind people of is that brake systems are an energy absorption system. The bigger the mass, the more energy you can hold on to. But it's just energy storage. It's until the next straightaway before you can dissipate that energy to the air flowing around it and to any other solid components within radiation distance, like the wheel, which also then cools to the air around it. The pad, as it wears down, it loses mass, so it thereby loses thermal energy capacity. So the thinner the pad, the more likely it is to fade, and that's any pad, any brand. That's just a fact of life with brake pads. The disc shouldn't change much in the mass, obviously, but the disc or the pad definitely will over time. Now, as far as the brake pads, some of you guys may have seen this before. The brass studs are one thing that people sometimes get nervous about. The next slide is going to show a little bit more about that. It's basically a mechanical retention system. Almost think of it as a Christmas tree shape. It's got threads cut into it. So the pad material actually interlocks with a mechanical bond as opposed to just an adhesive or a keying of the pad material into the backing plate. The steel backing plate, as it says down here, is basically a 5 mm thick, high tensile strength steel. So it's very stiff, very hard, and it's actually a little bit softer than the cast iron discs are, which people don't always know. Brass is actually about 2/3 the hardness of cast iron, so typically the brass studs don't cause any damage at all to the disc. I've never seen it happen before. We've supplied it at the OEM levels on a bunch of high-performance European cars and never had a problem with that. A lot of people look at the grooves in the pad rather, and really that's just designed to allow the pad to expand when it gets hot. Sometimes a really big pad will, as it expands, it'll create thermal stress within the pad itself and crack down through. Some people get nervous about it. Typically, it's not a problem, but it looks disturbing. Friction compounds. Generally speaking, what you guys use on the pad on these cars with the RST3 front compound, the RS44 on the rear, it's a phenolic resin bonded material. It's got roughly 25 ingredients, everything from adhesives, fillers, friction modifiers, and lubricants. Generally speaking, some of the friction modifiers are things like iron particles, and lubricants are low friction materials like moly disulfide. So some of these materials are in there. That's just part of the mix. It's what keeps the pads from getting too grippy or losing too much friction when they get hot. There is an adhesive bond at the bottom there. It mentions there's an adhesive bond that's a very thin layer between the steel backing plate and the actual friction material itself as it's molded to the pad backing plate. Now, top secret stuff. Most of these pads are molded, at about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The resins are actually heat-activated material that won't, when it gets poured in the mold, it's basically a dry powder, but the heat causes it to set enough that once we get it on the car, that's where when the bedding occurs, that's going to actually finish up the molding process, if you will. It'll finish the chemical transitions. I mentioned the brass pins a moment ago. Now, I like to think of changing pads at 4 to 5 millimeters because it's an easy visual check. You look at the backing plate, that's 5 millimeters thick. If the pad's thinner than that, right next to it, it's time to go. The other thing is sometimes you can see the brass studs poking through the material there at the end of each of those arrows. That's not necessarily doing any damage to the rotor. Some of those pins are actually as high as 12 to 15 millimeters tall in some of our thicker pads. So it's designed to hold it all very close to the backing plate. I've yet to see a pad come loose from the backing plate, which is strictly the benefit of this mechanism. Sorry, there's a little delay on the program here. Some of these cars originally had some slight problems with the abutment wear plates, where the pad basically rides against the caliper end here. There is no stainless steel abutment plate, which is typical of a racing caliper. These are street calipers after all. Basically, the fixes have been using a high heat copper or ceramic grease. Typically, a CV joint grease will use something like moly disulfide. That's a lot of the gray in some of the CV joint greases. Just a thin layer on that surface. Clearly, we don't want to get it on the disc or the pad surface. Just to help let the pad slide, the abutment plate slide on the steel backing plate, and keep an eye on the edge of the backing plates as well. I think we've pretty much I think every pad that comes out of the factory now should be nice and smooth. If there's ever one that's not, just take a file to it, round off the edge, so if the pad cocks at all, there's nothing to dig into the aluminum there. And that should take care of most of the problems. And if there's anything else that comes up, please let us know as soon as possible. Now, bedding procedures generally, going to go through that a little bit. You know, why is it so critical? Basically, it gives you a full contact of the pad with the disc, evening out the energy transfer across the entire face of the disc is really what's going to save the rotor's life, if you will, extend the rotor life, and cause a more efficient system. In this photograph, you can see the whole face of the disc on the bedding machine is completely red and consistent inside to outside. On the next slide, I actually included, I probably should have had this one on the previous page, but if you look at the one on the left, you can see there's a little red band toward the inside and one toward the outside. This is very likely a pad that's actually being used or brand new on there with a couple points where it's not contacting as heavily. That's actually what we're trying to avoid during the bedding process. That's why bedding at the beginning is such a gentle, careful procedure. We're basically trying to align the pad and the disc face to match perfectly. Bedding is really important because you need to transfer a layer of the friction material onto the face of the disc. That's where the friction is generated. You're not running pad on cast iron. It's actually pad on pad, but it's just a couple molecules thick on the disc face itself. And as I mentioned, part of the molding process, it goes to 300 Fahrenheit. Bedding the pads in gets them above that temperature, so it finishes the hardening of the pad. It boils off all the volatile organic compounds, like all the paint booths that I'm sure all the race teams have to meet all those regulations would fall into that. So all the VOCs boil off, and that's really what you smell. That's the clue when you're bedding the system in that it's getting hot enough is the smell. That's the outgassing of the resins. And part of the process also stabilizes anything that's compressible in there. Once it gets hot enough, it stabilizes, it stiffens up, and you've got a more consistent pedal. Whenever possible, use new pads on a used rotor or vice versa. One should be old, one should be new. That way you only have one item to stress about during the bedding procedure. If you've got new pads and new rotors, concentrate on getting the full surface contact with the pad and getting the rotor up to temperature. By the time you get the disc up to a good temperature and get everything bedded in, the pads will be good anyway. But be kind of extra gentle, if you will. Probably extend the time to get everything bedded in by about 50%. I mentioned here that discs should be allowed to cool down to near ambient after the bedding process. That just extends the life of the disc by about 15 to 20%. Pads, it's not nearly as critical. Pads, you can do it on the warm-up lap if you can do it fast enough. I will tell you though, do not drag the brakes during the bedding procedure. It will cause disc failures. I shouldn't say failures, cracking. Not on these cars that I've seen, but on some of the higher level cars, I have seen that where drivers tend to drive with their left foot on the brake and right foot on the gas to try to bed it quickly, and it causes nothing but problems. Don't do that. If you have to do it during a warm-up lap or formation lap, just start with the pedal, get it warm on the warm-up lap, consistently braking a couple of times, 5 times a minute, if you will, on the warm-up lap, and just get things warm as you can, and then from there it will work. It's just not going to be as good on the first couple laps. Now, when you're doing it the proper way, getting the disc and pad to line up perfectly, depending on the flatness of the rotor, if it's got grooves, it's going to take a little longer. 10 to 20 light to medium stops, just basically getting things warm, initiate a little bit of heat in it. When you transfer the layer of pad to the disc, once everything's kind of matched up, it feels like, once you start applying it a little harder, the driver will start to feel that process working more effectively. When you're done with that process, when you feel like it's working as well as it's going to, just ease off a little bit, and that'll be your cool off lap on the way in. But don't just coast on that entire lap. Use the brakes a little lighter on the way in the pits, and just let everything kind of come back down toward ambient, and that'll actually help the life of everything quite effectively. Judder and vibrations. It's rare that a disc warps. I always thought of it as a potato chip effect early on in my life, pre-working for the brake manufacturers. Generally speaking, judder and vibrations are typically a disc thickness variation. That's why the pad kicks back once in a while, is because you're pushing fluid back out, because both pads are being pushed back from the disc center line. It's pretty common. It happens quite often. It's usually the result of underheating or overheating the brakes during the bedding procedure. Generally, it will work itself out. Occasionally, it gets bad enough that it can't. You just have to change discs or scuff them up with light sandpaper and try it again. I have seen it where drivers come into the pits and stand on the brake pedal for too long during pit stops occasionally. If you ever notice the disc with a pad outline right on it, there are two things cause that. One is washing the car and letting it sit with a rusty disc between the pad, or imprinting when they stand on the pedal and the brakes in the pits, and when they leave, the material that has been contacting the pad is now bonded back to the pad, and as the car drives away, it peels all that material out of the disc face, and that actually is what's going to cause some vibration until it rebeds that particular portion of the disc face. It happens more than you think. Now, brake fade, there are two situations where brake fade occurs. There's pad fade, which basically means the interface between the pad and the disc goes higher than the pad material can generate friction. Basically, it effectively vaporizes the pad at that interface, and tends to, if it weren't for the grooves in the disc face, it would just be like hydroplaning the tire across a wet road. It just does nothing. The way it works now is it basically doesn't work very well, but you can stand on the pedal as hard as you want. It doesn't pump up like brake fluid fade will, but it does have very limited stopping power. Fluid fade on the other side is basically you're boiling the brake fluid. Castrol SRF has a very good high dry boiling point and wet boiling point for that matter. If you ever boil the fluid in a caliper, most calipers are designed and built with EPDM rubber seals, which really start to harden above 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you boil the brake fluid, which is typically a boiling point of around 550, 575, over 300 Fahrenheit, you've basically cooked the seals. If you have that occur, plan on rebuilding the caliper. Replace the seals, because what happens is it gets hard, it stops pulling the piston back as much as it should, which reduces drag, which also means that there's no thermal path break between the pad back, between the pad vacuum plate and the piston. So there's more heat going through that, again, making the same situation worse. Only way to solve this problem is fresh fluid and bleed it regularly. I can't stress that highly enough. Even on my track day cars, I do it after every track day. I just do it just out of habit. The wet boiling point is something that a lot of people don't quite understand. It seems like really that for racing, it's kind of a relatively unimportant value. If we're maintaining the cars properly, it should not be a significant concern. The dry boiling point's the key. Keeping it up at that end, keeping the fluid in their car for less than, say, 3 months at a time, or at least in the calipers for less than 3 months at a time, should be perfectly adequate. You're basically looking at the 572 or higher. I'm not sure what the dry boiling point of SRF is. I think it's like 589 or something off the top of my head. But as long as you're at that end, you're probably in pretty good shape. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. It will absorb moisture from the atmosphere. If you open a bottle of brake fluid and let it sit there on a rainy day and with the top off, it will gain weight just sitting there. And that's all water moisture, all water molecules bonding with the brake fluid. So keep it capped between uses. Try to use smaller amounts, use smaller bottles. I'm not sure what SRF comes size-wise, but basically keep it capped between and stay on top of bleeding it regularly, and that'll solve 99% of your issues. Compound characteristics for the RST3 front and RS44 rear pad. Generally speaking, on these cars in particular, we're running between 300C and 600C, which is 550 Fahrenheit, and I can't do the math that quickly in my head. But the reality is, when I take temperatures in the pits, which some of you guys probably have had that happen, or if you do it yourselves, it's going to be at the lower end of that spectrum. It's going to be definitely toward that lower end. It may be 400C, and that's well within the range of the pad. Pad doesn't have any problem in it going as high as 700C. The rear pad, same thing. It's going to work between 250 and 450 typically. That's where it's happiest. Once you start getting above, especially on the rear compound, once you start getting above that 600C mark, it's going to fade. The front does not seem to do that nearly as much, and it should be pretty consistent. There's not much change in friction between minimum and max on these anyway, so the braking stability should be very good with these two compounds. If you see temperatures that are consistently higher than that, try to keep an eye on driver technique. If the driver's overslowing the car, it just puts a higher load on the brake discs, on the brake system. That can quite often become part of the problem. And novice drivers often have that problem. Is they're harder on the brakes, not because they're going faster, but because they're slowing the car more for each corner. Those are the big things that I concern myself with. And that's pretty much all I've got for you guys, so thank you for your attention.
Hello guys, this is Peter Calhoun from BFG Tires. As David said, I am the Motorsport Marketing Manager for BF Goodrich. For those of you that are not familiar with BF Goodrich, we are a subsidiary of Michelin. Michelin has been the owner of BF Goodrich since 1990, and we're their Tier 2 brand throughout the world now, but obviously we are a brand of American heritage and founding and very well known for our ultra high performance tires for decades in America. The Global MX-5 Cup program was very exciting for all the partners to be involved with Mazda Motorsports and long road racing under the development. As many of you are aware, in the spring of 2015, Glenn and his team started testing the prototype cars publicly in conjunction with the MC Series cars during the MX-5 Cup series traveling around the country. During that test process and design process, we were utilizing the BF Goodrich G-Force R1S, which had been used in the series in 2013 and 14 and into the 2015 season. And we developed the car around that tire, but then away from public viewing, there was additional work going on to get a tire solution that was really designed appropriately for the ND chassis, because it presented some unique challenges in that everything was a little bit smaller and tighter than the previous generation car. So the tire we had been running on in 13 through 15 wasn't sized properly. It was a little bit tall, it was a little bit wide. So working in partnership, the BF Goodrich engineers here in Greenville, South Carolina, and the engineers at Long Road Racing, and with Ray's Wheel, we developed a tire that's properly sized for the ND chassis. We have a couple different solutions. Waiting for my slide to change here. For the car, David, could you hit forward, please? Obviously, we have the dry slick. In nomenclature, it's a 215 610 R17. For those of you that have come out of club racing or other properties where they're running more conventional metric sized tires, the question always comes up, what's the 610? Well, just like your normal passenger cars, the 215 is the section width of the tire, and the 610 is the outside diameter in millimeters of the tire. So if you convert that, it's roughly 24 inches tall. Obviously, the R signifies radial, and it's a 17-inch rim diameter. To add to that, the wet tire is a 2061. Now, the sequence of sizing goes the same, but it's actually labeled in Michelin nomenclature in centimeters instead of millimeters. So that's a 2061 would be equivalent to like a 200 610. So the wet tire is a little bit narrower and shorter than the dry tire, but again, it's properly sized for the tight wheel boxes of the ND chassis. This tire solution is being used not only in the American Series this year, but it also kicked off in Japan 6 weeks or so ago. They've had two race weekends under their belts in Japan already, utilizing the same tires. Those of you that are running club racing or country club events, be aware, obviously this is a pure race slick. It's a non-DOT competition tire, so it is not street legal. I will get to our solution on that here shortly. All the BF Goodrich tires, less the wet, are designed and engineered in Greenville, South Carolina at the Michelin Technical Center, where all BF Goodrich race tires are designed, and manufactured at our plant in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So when we were at Barber 4 short weeks ago, we were only about an hour up the road from where those tires are all made. The wet tire solution, as I mentioned, that is designed and manufactured in France. It's designed and manufactured in the same facility that does Michelin competition wets for all of our global motorsport properties in Clermont-Ferrand. So that is in fact built in the exact same factory by the exact same people, the exact same engineers that do our product for Le Mans, MotoGP, World Rally Championship. It's the same facility where we've been headquartered since the 1800s. The tire solution for the Global MX-5 Cup, as far as availability, it's very simple. It is from one of two people for North America. These are the only two dealers, and it's Long Road Racing, the constructor of the car, and Jackson Motorsports Group here in Greenville, who is my trackside service provider. So those of you that are doing the Pro Series, Gary, and everything that run the truck, there with the Jackson Motorsports Group and run my trucks for me. Moving on, the next important document for you as competitors is the care and feeding guide. All of you should have received that on the memory stick. David, could you forward it again? It's appears stuck. On the memory stick, you would have received with delivery of your car if you purchased it new from Long Road Racing. And if you're a second-hand owner already, hopefully you got those documents along with the purchase of the car. If you did not, I would be happy to email you a PDF copy. Just drop me an email. As stated there at peter.calhoun@michelin.com, and it's a quick PDF. I can send it off to you. What is within this document, though, is a lot of just general information on BF Goodrich competition tires, but more specific to the MX-5 Cup Global car. And it's based on a lot of testing, both independent, away from competition race weekends, as well as what our engineers find on site. As many of you know, Perry Hyder leads our engineering and design team on site at each event. But when we're taking your pressures and temperatures in pit lane and reviewing with competitors in the paddock, you know, we do that to increase our knowledge base on the performance of the tire, and a lot of these recommendations end up here. So contained within is everything from pressures and camber guidelines, dimensional information, getting a little bit more specific to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, spring rate information. If any of you have an engineer working with your team, occasionally spring rate for the tire will come into question, what it is. Operating temperature range is a common one. On that topic, I will tell you this tire is very consistent. One of the objectives of any tire we design, and it doesn't matter the property, it's really a something we follow in Group Michelin for all our motorsport properties, is consistency and total performance. So that from green flag to checker flag, the tire will be consistent once it gets up to operating temperature. It's not going to be a real peaky tire where it gets up to operating temperature and there's a few quick laps and it falls off a cliff. Once it gets that operating temperature, as long as it's not abused, no different than the brake pads, it's going to offer consistent performance over a 45-minute sprint race like we're doing in Global MX-5 Cup. And then obviously safety and storage information. As far as general tire performance, there's a couple things to make everybody aware of. First off, always run valve caps. Our preference is if you run a metal cap, or excuse me, a plastic cap, even if it's a full metal valve, not a rubber snap-in. The valve cap will help keep debris out of the Schrader valve. It'll help eliminate any air being released accidentally. It's just a good safety measure to keep it clean and not avoid problems. Pressure and temperature are key to maximize the performance of any tire. So make sure you have a good quality tire gauge and needle type pyrometer. I know a lot of people have gravitated towards infrared pyrometers. They may be good for getting consistent readings, but they're not going to be accurate readings necessarily. You really need to have a needle to get into the rubber in 3 different points across the face of the tire to be able to get good, accurate readings with the pyrometer. If you're ever at an MX-5 Cup event and my truck is there, we do have a calibration station under our awning also. So if you need to test your gauge or your pyrometer to see about its accuracy, its consistency, or compare 2 different gauges that you have in your toolbox, we do have that calibration station up and running at our awning every day, and just feel free to come by and test them, and the engineers will be happy to help you out with any questions. David, one more time, please. There you go. For those of you that are also running your car in club racing, in January, we did come out with a DOT tire solution for the MX-5 Cup car. It was based on our testing over the course of the 2016 in the professional series, and we adapted that to a DOT version of the tire. So it's very similar to our G-Force R1S that's been in the club race market for a few years now. We've utilized that same compound on the tire and the proverbial two-groove type tire for club racing applications, whether it be in SCCA or NASA or other independent clubs where Global MX-5 Cup cars are currently running. You will notice a few slight differences compared to previous generation R1S tires. One being that the circumferential grooves are a little bit closer together on the tire. They're not as far spaced out, and the dashes in the groove are a little bit longer. So the contact patch is actually a little bit larger on the tire, and moving the grooves inward, that fulcrum point that's in the casing of the tire has moved inward, and that would help out with club racing where you may have experienced on our tire and others a little groove there when the tires are really loaded under cornering historically. Again, this tire is designed to give real consistent performance in a sprint racing application from green flag to checker. It is DOT approved in the US and Canada and is made in the exact same facility as the slick tire for the professional series. Dimensionally and the inner carcass of the tire virtually identical to the slick tire. There are some slight differences to get DOT approval, but 95% of the tire is identical. Do have SCCA major and contingency programs on offer for the tire. The NASA program is posted on their website. The SCCA majors program, please reach out to me and I can give you details on it. It is not posted on the website of the office in Topeka. And again, that tire is available exclusively from Long Road Racing or Jackson. Lastly, oops, I went one too far. Lastly, BFGoodrichRacing.com. I know at the beginning of the presentation, David mentioned some updates to the Mazda Motorsports website. We too have a website exclusive to our racing activities, and it's both for news and entertainment, but as well as product information. So as you can see from the bullet points there, we have news from all our different properties as well as hyperlinks to those properties, including MX-5 Cup. I send a picture, screenshot there. Twitter feed from different properties and news agencies. It's just a motorsport feed of news and videos and photo galleries. Tire catalog is important. That is a tire catalog of all our competition product for both our brands, separate from our consumer portfolio of products. So that includes Michelin Slicks, for example, or if any of you decide to go racing in Baja next week, that is all on there, and then an event calendar. And lastly, I know this is, I don't know if Dean is on the line lurking tonight, but all of us, I will speak for all 4 companies on the line, we always like you to be out there talking about us on social media and posting pictures and everything. And those are our hashtags for our brand. They're at the bottom. So again, thank you very much for your support of Mazda Global MX-5 Cup, and I am going to turn it over to Mr. Long.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're all enjoying the presentation. I'm glad that you're all here. And David and Mazda Motorsports, thanks for putting this on. It's a great opportunity. Thank you. So what I wanted to do is just briefly talk a little bit about some of the things that we do here at Long Road Racing. As all of you know, we are the manufacturer for the vehicle. We provide support for customers that have purchased the cars directly from Long Road. We provide the technical support not only for the pieces and parts that we put on the cars, but as well as for the stock components as well. So if you have a question about the car itself or how something operates, that is a question that you should come to Long Road Racing with. We also help a lot of our customers with some parts and repair information as they need certain items. Sometimes it's not exactly clear what the part number may be, so we're more than happy to help identify the part number. And then, of course, you purchase through Mazda Motorsports. we also do some repair work. There's been a few cars that have come back to back home, if you will, in Statesville, and we have recaged 2 cars now, and are able to provide some just general repair work as well. If a team doesn't want to undertake replacement of frame rails, things of that nature, we help with that as well. So the repairs are something that we're also more than happy to help with advice and counsel to teams. Sometimes we've had a few cases now where a team has undertaken a repair and they've run into some problems. And again, we're able to help consult on those type of activities. And as you well know, we, for those of you that run the Global MX-5 Cup Series, I'm very lucky fortunate to have a great team, and Chad and Cam are always available to provide support of any kind under your canopy or under our canopy, as far as technical support, questions, again, how do things work or why doesn't something work, just like we would provide for phone support. And also Andreas has been managing the Mazda parts, and that's worked out very well, hopefully for everybody. We try to keep track of orders that we are out of stock on and adjust our quantities, and hopefully that you take advantage of those services. So what we've tried to do a lot is listen to you, our customers, and understand some of the things that you'd like to see improvements on the cars or suggestions, things of that nature. So you may have seen in some of the recent technical service bulletins, TSBs, that we are now offering, based on your input, several new options that are on the car. We would not offer an option that is a performance enhancement. We do make any TSBs that are optional that are non-performance enhancing. If they are performance enhancing, we would make that a required change, not an optional. I've had that question a few times now. So we've offered this year pit lane speeds. I think those of you that ran Barber have seen that IndyCar is pretty strict on their pit lane speed, so we can help you with that with a pit lane speed option. We've heard that the reverse lights, A, they don't work because we didn't program it into the GEMS unit, and B, they were expensive to change if you got bump trapped and they cracked. So again, based on your input, you now have the option of removing the reverse lights. You wanted some more horsepower. With the latest GEMS ECU update, we've provided some additional horsepower. We've enhanced the aim dash for your feedback, so you can actually see if there's an issue, what the specific issue is, instead of just a little light that's coming on. And we're also providing additional items in the data stream for your engineers. We've had a few customers that have had a spin. Of course, it wasn't their fault, but they had a spin, and the engine would run really rough. We saw that was a PVC tube that was popping off. So we put out a TSB for that. We've had several requests about fender liners. We understand and we see that they rub through, and are trying to see what we can come up with as a standard template, perhaps to cut away some of the area. But unfortunately, the fender liner holds on the front fascia, and on the left side also protects a lot of very important wiring. So we can't just say, well, just take them out. So that's something that we are looking at. So love your input. You guys are really kind. You send a lot of really complimentary emails, and thank you for doing that. It makes us all feel good, and some of that are pretty pointed on some opportunities to do better, and we're always interested in those as well. So love to hear from you guys, and would appreciate any additional input. As David said earlier, we now have a hardtop that's available for NASA, SCCA, and PWC. It is not going to be a part that's going to be used in Global MX-5 Cup. Global MX-5 Cup, after all, is a roadster series, so we will not do a hardtop on that. The new top, if you haven't seen the pictures, I think Mazda's done an outstanding job on the design. It has, lack of a better phrase, some large flutes on the top that help break the air behind your car. That's been a complaint in club racing that some of the other cars are able or capable of sucking up due to a large hole in the air. This top eliminates that, and we were able to see that in club race this past weekend with NASA, as well as a couple of weeks ago with PwC up at VIR. We've also, as I said earlier, we have the pit lane speed limiter. And by the way, just a quick note on that, we also have a selector button, so you can select the various pit lane speeds from 30 to, I believe it's 45 or 50 miles an hour, depending on the track. That way, you just don't have one number. You have some options there. We also have an engine oil pressure as well as transmission temperature gauge. So now you can measure oil pressure. The stock engine is just a binary, yes, you have oil pressure switch. So now you have the option of getting some additional data there. And we also have a relatively quiet track day exhaust. Some of our customers have gone to tracks. Some of the sound ratings or limits, I should say, are super, super low, like 90 dB. I don't know how you get a race car down to 90 dB, but we do have an exhaust system that, and of course your results may vary, wind, temperature, humidity alters, but we typically can go down from about 102 dB, which is typically what the normal global MX-5 Cup car generates, down to approximately 94 dB. So it's a significant cut with a minor reduction in power, and really an excellent tool to use for testing, and it is a direct bolt-in to the midsection and or the rear muffler section. So something that you may want to keep in mind. Also within PwC, there is a weight of 2,600 pounds. Because the car is so quick, they had to slow the ND down, and they're also using that as a benchmark for the class. So those that also race the NC versions, they're taking weight off those cars to keep all of the Mazdas competitive. But in order to meet minimum weight with your ND model, it's turned out to be rather difficult to get that much weight into the car. So we have fabricated an inch-thick steel plate that weighs approximately 80 pounds, net of 75 additional pounds. Just what we all want to do is add weight to our cars. But regardless, if you'd like to run that series, that is another part that's available. And as Peter had said, we also provide tires, be it the wets or the dries or the DOTs for BF Goodrich. A couple of other quick things. There's a picture here. This is from a great shot that Racer Magazine took of the ND streetcar that we have. They labeled it the ultimate MX-5. That was really an honor, and hats off to Mazda for building such a beautiful base car to be able to work from and make modifications. Speaking of modifications, this past weekend we ran a standard global MX-5 Cup car, no modifications other than we put a sequential SADIV gearbox into the car, and we also ran the hardtop. And VIR, we were able to run a 207.8, which is a really quick lap time. And there's an incredible video on Long Road Racing's Facebook, or if you just go to YouTube and look up GMX5 Cup sequential gearbox, you'll see it. Really pretty special. Nothing that we're ever going to use for the racing, at least with the current series that the car runs in, but it is something for those of you that are run the cars in HPDEs, country clubs, anything along those lines. It could be a really fun option in the future. We also have some roll cages for NBs, FIA style, similar to what you have in the Global MX-5 Cup car, as well as a series of street performance options for your street MX-5 Cup car. We have some suspension and also some pieces and parts that are directly applicable for a street car from the Global MX-5 Cup program. So, David, again, thank you very much, and I'll hand it back over to you.
Glenn, really appreciate all of your effort in the whole program. I'll say the same to Ian and to Pete. Thank you for the effort getting us to where we're at, and also for all the time that you committed in preparing for today's webinar and the time, of course, to conduct it. So I think it's really, really special. We're very lucky to have you guys. So thank you again. Regarding the Q&A, so it looks like we do have a few questions here. I'll just start at the bottom. I'll read them out loud, and then someone on this call I think could answer them. So Matt Koskinen said, is there any difference between the MX-5 Cup Slick used in 2016 versus 2017? I'll of course let Pete answer.
Look, okay, there is no change to the tire for 2017 from a performance standpoint. There was one small cosmetic change. We added a multicolor sidewall applique of BF Goodrich branding to the sidewall, but other than that, there have been no changes to the tire other than 2017 production builds.
Thanks, Pete. Got another one for you. Really sorry for no particular order, but really appreciate the support from Club Racing and Track Days. This is from Michael Globe. Can you compare the heat cycle characteristics of the slicks versus the RS?
So I do not have a lot of data on that yet, direct head-to-head. I can ask one of the engineers and circle back if they want to drop me an email with the address earlier. However, not to put Glenn on the spot, but Glenn might have more information on that from work he has done with Tom and Andrew.
Yeah,
they should be very similar.
They are virtually identical. We were fortunate enough to help BF Goodrich do some testing at their test facility in Lawrence, as well as down at NOLA, as a matter of fact. And we found that the two tires perform virtually identical and same number of heat cycles.
Yeah, the variable on heat cycles will really come down more to driving style and vehicle setup, and then the parameters that none of us can control between ambient and track temperatures and track surface. So not knowing what area of the country is and what your home track is, the tarmac of an individual track can make a huge difference on how many heat cycles you get out of a set of tires.
Great. Adamir Fedimenti, PWC rear pad availability, question mark. Adamir, I'll need to get an answer to you on this. I don't have it off the top of my head. So I'll shoot you a note tomorrow morning when I get into the office. Michael Globe said thank you. And then Dave Wheeler, DOT rain tire. So back to you, Pete, DOT rain tire.
We do not currently have a DOT rain tire solution. The NC chassis car did have a 215 4517 wet tire solution. However, it was not a DOT compliant tire at the time. So at this time, we do not have a DOT wet to complement the dry tire.
Moving on to Nick Leverone. What was Scott Kaluza's cell again? It is 951 445 2701. That's 951 445 2701. I do highly encourage you guys, if you're going to text for this purpose, to include me on the text, so you've got double the chances here. And my number 949 929 8494, and then we'll get right back with you. Let's see, moving
David,
up. Go ahead.
David, if I could just jump in very quickly, it may be helpful for you and Scott if the customer includes their name as well as their phone number.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you for that tip, please. Okay, looks like we got one in from Len here. Does Pagid have a specific GMX brake pad bedding process that we should use? I've had to develop my own process because the first set must not have been bedded correctly, and the rotors developed a bad vibration after about 10 to 12 hours of track time. I think, turned or tuned the rotors, turned the rotors to remove the buildup from the pads, put them and new pads back on, implemented the process we developed, and it worked great.
I would say Really, it's driver related most of the time with the betting process. Unless it's computer betted ahead of time, there's going to be nobody does it exactly the same anyway, no matter what we tell them. But basically, it's build some heat into the system gently, get it up to temperature after 2 or 3 laps at most tracks, call it. Then another 2 or 3 laps of using it progressively harder and harder until the driver can feel them starting to work well. Once he can feel them biting like they should, he will notice a difference. It's not subtle. At that point, then you back it off and then bring it in the pits and let it cool down a little bit. Doesn't necessarily need to be a specific process, again, because every track is different and the frequency of brake usage is different. Just have a driver that pays attention and be gentle with it initially, and just sort of ramp it up to temperature as over the course of 3 to 5 laps, I'd say.
From Nick again, how was the camber limit decided on, and is there any requests to increase that? Maybe start with you, Glenn, on the thought process that we went through here.
Yeah, there isn't a limit that I know, Nick. As I'm almost positive, neither series or sanctioning organization limit what you can run the camber to. When we did our testing with BF Goodrich initially, that's where the results are in the care and feeding guide. So you can certainly adjust the rears to some pretty wild numbers, greater than 4 degrees. We don't suggest it, but as far as I'm aware, there's not a limit. And Nick, if you'd like, please feel free to just send me an email separately. I know you have my email address, which is glenn@longroadracing.com, and maybe I can answer more specifically. Pete, is there anything you want to add about a camber dimension for the document?
No, as Glenn said, the range of adjustability is above and beyond what the recommendation is. As Glenn said, through testing, both in public and private, we came up with sort of a guideline, and that's specifically what it is, a guideline. But recognizing that there's pros and cons to each, what the compromise is going to be in the performance of the tire and the handling of the car. So there is some trial and error, and again, just frequently from both Ian and Glenn and myself, driver feel will have a large variable on where you end up.
Dave, we'll look into the SSCA rule of a 3-degree limit. That did not come from us. I know the conversations were if you go outside of that, as Glenn was talking about it, it's pretty risky as far as consistency, and some of the drivers were putting some quick laps together, but unfortunately just not enough in a row before they had an issue. So something I think we could address perhaps with you and Nick, and then maybe the SCCA. And I'm going to work all the way back up to the top, so I'm not trying to avoid a question on PwC. I'll definitely get to that as well, though my information is not going to be much different, if any, than what Pirelli World Challenge provided, because that's what they told us as well. So Carl said, how much work is it to put the hardtop on and off? Glenn, you want to take that one?
Yeah, 20 minutes including polishing it. It's really easy. There's a total of, the very early hardtops only had 4, the new ones have 5 mounting points, and all of the hardware is provided. It's just at the base of the B-pillar, right behind your seat, and then 3 up across the top, 2 edges, and now the center is an added one. So it really goes on very quickly.
Glenn, I think there's just one tool as well.
Correct. It's just like one. I'm not sure what the bolt heads are, but it's probably like a 14-millimeter socket.
All right, great. When do you switch rotors? If not, when you switch pads?
When do you switch rotors? The only time I would switch rotors is when they start to have cracks at heat checking, if you will, that approaches the inner and outer radius of the disc. Up to that point, I would leave the discs on the car unless you develop a vibration of some sort. That's general rule. Changing pads, once a disc is on there, you probably run 3 or 4 races, I would imagine, with one set of discs. So betting becomes very easy at that point.
Okay, another tire question. I'm not sure if I'm understanding. If we X the tires to get more run out of them, they run the opposite direction. Are the DOT tires designed to allow this?
The tire is not directional. It may be run in either direction, so if they desired to flip the tire, that is not an issue. The only thing that they would encounter initially would be if the tire had gotten a camber built into it, especially if they're going to run crazy cambers like Nick is wanting to run. But no, the tire is not directional, so it can be flipped.
Thanks for clearing that up for me too there, Pete. Okay.
Mm.
Let's see, scrolling up here. I think the last question that I see here is from Roger.